from I invited you personally to attend is to have a candid conversation about aging and caring during the later years of life. And my name is Joel. I'm an occupational therapist and I work in long-term care and memory care settings. But my personal and professional advocacy is to promote aging in place and senior care in the community. Aging in place and caring for seniors requires a thoughtful conversation with yourself and your family. And my hope tonight is to offer you a safe place to begin this conversation. Also, your presence tonight will enrich the content of this presentation with your own stories you're going to share and your experiences with caring for yourself or oneself and caring for others. So let's begin our conversation with introducing ourselves and briefly describe your current living environment or situation. For example, do you live in a house or do you live in an apartment or senior community? So I guess we'll start with Ed.
Hi, my name is Ed, and I live in a house.
Okay.
I live in Norristown, and I live by myself.
Is it a two-story house?
It's a two-story house.
Okay. And steps to get into
There are steps. Yeah, actually, it's 3 stories. There's steps from the basement up to the first floor, second floor, all the way up to the attic.
Okay. Chris?
Yes, I live in an apartment and it's the basement of the building. It's actually clusters of buildings, but you have
Step down.
to step down a few more steps before you can get to the
Okay. And Esther?
Same as Chris because we are roommates.
Yes, I understand that you live together in an apartment. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I guess everyone's still working and actively driving, moving around the community. How far is your parking spot to your apartment? How
It's
far?
just at the back of the building.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I asked the questions as basically in the context of aging in place, we need to address where you live. Okay. So we'll talk more about that at a later point in our discussion. So my question is, where do you envision yourself living 10 or 20 years from now or from today? And also think about the resources to support where you plan to live later in life. So I hope that tonight I'll provide this information so you can craft your plan as you plan for age in place or something different, and also how to set up your resources when you're doing that. So to begin, I would like us to first delve into issues and current state of aging in place by watching this video, and it can take a while. So this I'd like to introduce to you Mrs. B and her experience with Capable, a program offered by Johns Hopkins University School of Nursing.
Became ill, they were thinking about, my son said, well, maybe you need to go into one of these assisted living or into one of these senior apartments. I don't want to go there. And at first I was going to, and then one day I sat there and I said, no, this is my home. I'm not using my home. Here, like coming in and out the door before you put the bar, installed the bar, which by the way, everybody likes. Not just me, even my 3-year-old granddaughter uses it. But before that, I had to depend on the walker. Okay, that was a big fear, so I never went in and out on my own, ever. somebody was always here to take me out or bring me in. So I didn't have the independence of going out when I wanted to. See, the whole thing behind what you did and what my normal life before you came in was everything was, I can't take the risk. Taught me how to function and gave me the tools to function with. Where the other therapists from the hospital, and I'm not being mean, I'm being honest, they didn't give me any tools, they just come in and shot orders. This is what I expect out of you when I come back in 3 days. Don't tell me what you expect from me. Everything you've done has given me my independence. My independence. That's your difference.
Reflecting on the video, do you see yourself in her situation at some point?
Well, if I'm lucky to live that long, yes.
Right, exactly, right.
It's eventually, I can relate to this because my brother and I were caring for my mother, and I moved her into my house for the last couple of months of her life, and we had to almost shadow her everywhere she went because her balance wasn't good. So for the most part, she lived up on the second floor where the bathroom was, and anytime she came down, it would only be once probably a day. We had to watch her walking down the steps.
Right.
So everything that you take for granted when you're younger and you're sure-footed, when you go walking around, you can't do that with an older person. You have to have grab bars, you have to have walkers, you have to have access to a bathroom, and you have to watch them when they're down the steps. And you can't even, someone has to be home, when it gets to that point, someone has to be home watching them even during the day. So all those things you take for granted that we do all the time, for a senior person, it's not the same.
Right. Yeah, that's right, Ed. Yeah, you told me about that story before. So is aging in place or having to go to this program, is it something you want for yourself at some point in your life?
Yes. It gives an overview of, well, I am already my 70s,
Right.
71, so although I'm still active.
Yes.
Yeah, and but maybe when you're in the 80s,
Yeah.
if I read also that you will slow down and need help, and maybe
It's the best place for them,
Yeah.
the safest place, and it's easier on the family members
Yeah.
when they're in a place like that.
So that's exactly the reason why we're here. As what Mrs. B experienced, she is having difficulty living on her own, right? So, but she wanted to age in place. Initially, she had some experience with hospital staff, results that she didn't like, and her son is actually encouraging her to move out, but she wanted to stay. Lucky enough, she opted to stay and participated in this program that they have in Johns Hopkins, and she experienced a different result. So the home was modified. There was education from the nurses, occupational therapists, and there was a handyman who actually came in and installed all this modification. And following that, there was training to follow through with all the things that she needs to do with all this modification. And not only that, she was happy because her family and friends also benefited from the modifications, because it actually improved the accessibility of her house, that some of her friends and even her family members are able to visit her. So we'll discuss more about her experience later in the discussion. So for now, from your reflection and our initial discussion, your interest in knowing about this topic is in line with the objectives of the session. So I hope after this presentation, we'll be able to address some of the objectives, or if not all the objectives tonight. So basically at the end of this information sharing session, you will be able to describe community-based senior care services in the context of aging in place and dementia care or senior care, identify community-based resources for aging in place and dementia care, and specific objectives include describe why is it essential for us to be informed about aging in place. To define aging in place, it is the ability of the elderly to continue to live in their own homes as long as possible. AARP in 2005 reported that American seniors over 65 years old are growing in numbers each year, and they're also living longer. In a study of Horowitz in 2013, this phenomenon triggered a change in societal perception about age and its impact on complex relationship between the home, the function, long-term care, and quality of life. Moreover, the housing environment can positively and negatively impact or support community living, independence in daily activities, physical, mental health, and long-term needs. So as you can see in the screen, 90% of the seniors wants to stay at home. Okay? And already, the number about 60% already have been doing some modifications to support their independence. And as you know, this, for our home remodeler, this is a big industry. So because aging in place is about 10% of the chunk of about 214 billion spent in home remodeling or home improvement industry. So community living for older adults, community living older adults actually lacks understanding of how environment magnifies age-related changes concerning about one's ability to function. Sometimes people seldom discuss livability until it has become evident that the community where they live does not meet their needs anymore. So within the spectrum of senior living, there are different forms of living arrangement. And one of the study compared the cost and the level of care and supervision. At the bottom here, this is where you live at home. It has the lowest cost of staying at home. Okay. The range of support, it depends from 0 to maybe 100% help or assistance needed. So in this area, you can definitely do a lot of aging in place programs where you can modify the home. And some other people, they still want aging in place, but they don't want to stay at their own house, so they opt to certain kind of communities or settings, such as independent living facilities, senior co-op, congregated housing, and senior apartments, or even retirement community like 55 and up, and things like that. But as you can see, the cost of staying here is more than compared to this. So again, depending on your resources, financial resources, and assistance from your family, that would impact a lot in your decision making. Now that you have some perspective about aging in place, I would like us to take time to evaluate your current status by going over a needs assessment, which you're actually doing now, and to continue to think about your activities pattern and your current living situation. And to further help us out with understanding more of what your needs are, we also need to understand the barriers to aging in place. So one of the things is just look into yourself, okay, your health assessment. One, look at also if you're born, if you're not an adopted child, try to understand if you know your biological parents, what are their medical history. So sometimes that helps you, my grandfather died at 99 years old, so there's a chance that I could reach 99 years old. And my grandmom, most of my grandmother died of old age too. My other grandfather died, but he was, I guess, in his late 70s. So the range for me is probably 70 to 99 years old. So you also need to think about those things, because when you plan for aging in place, you need to consider your individual health and your familiar health history. And also the things that happens as we grow older, which we can't stop. Okay, so this is actually one of the things that we're going to do today or tonight is to have this simple activity to just heighten our awareness about how these changes impacts our function. So I'm going to ask Chris to help me out with our activity tonight. You can just stay on your table and come to you. All right. So what I want you to do is I'd like you to hold this ball and put your hand into the sock like this. All right. And this one. All right. Okay. Yep. So you need to be holding the ball while your hand is inside the sock. Okay. That's it.
Maybe if I can stick to it.
Yes. That's all right.
Yeah, okay, so I have to, should have taken this
Okay. And now I'm gonna ask you to open the jar and close
With
it.
this?
Yes.
With these
the-
balls?
Right.
Wow. Woohoo!
How is it?
It's hard.
Very challenging or
Very, very.
quite?
See, it doesn't even work. No, I can't.
Right.
Maybe I have to let go of the ball.
All right. I guess I made my point.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Now we're gonna ask Ed. Ed.
Pretty innocent.
I'm gonna ask Ed to stand here. Okay, I'm gonna have Ed wear these glasses, and I'm gonna ask Ed to walk around the table and come back to where he started. Ed's got good balance, so it will be easy for him.
Yeah.
Still young.
Easy for you.
All right. Now we'll
That's easier.
we'll have Ed walk again without the glasses. Okay. Thanks,
Good
Ed.
job. You passed it. 75.
All right. Chris, what can you say about the activity?
The ball, putting it inside with my, holding it
Mm.
is easier, but opening the
Sure.
glass is
Difficult. Okay.
definitely.
So imagine a person with arthritis, okay, at least the severe form of arthritis, and trying to stay at home and trying to do the simple task of opening a jar. So it's really quite challenging. And person with diabetic neuropathy, okay, when you lost sensation and able to feel what you're doing, it's quite hard also. So what we demonstrated with Ed is to make it difficult for him to see because I made it like a tape here. So maybe we can ask Ed what's his experience between walking with and without the glasses.
It was obviously easier when I had the glasses off because I had my peripheral vision.
Right. So you notice that with
Yeah.
the furrow.
My father had problems with his vision late in his life where he couldn't see depth perception
Right.
and he would misstep
Mhm.
and he would stumble and he wasn't sure-footed because he had poor vision and so I can totally understand how that would be a problem for a senior.
Right. Good. So that's the point of this activity, to heighten our awareness to these age-related changes in terms of mobility, sensory, and obviously cognitive changes as well. So the reason that we did this one is to highlight the specific area in aging in place where do you belong? Because there's 3 segments that were described based on needs. So the first one are people without urgent needs. So these are a segment of population who want to age in place, but they're not experiencing any immediate or significant health issues. So they're just a regular, you need to wear glasses when you read, or you take some times because you feel like your hip is achy, but it goes away later in the day, things like that. So for this group of people, usually we apply the principles of universal design when addressing their needs. So for example, if you start to feel like your hands have difficulty manipulating doorknobs, so instead of using a ball kind of doorknob, then you can use just a lever, okay? Instead of using in a faucet turning, you can use the one with low effort, so that it's easy for you to turn on and turn off the faucet. Yep. The second group are people with progressive-based condition. So these are the segment who have a chronic or progressive condition that requires certain modification or attention to allow them to age in place. Like patient with maybe the earlier part of Parkinson's disease, or person with diabetes with some issues with their balance. So maybe we can improve their ability to be independent by just providing grab bars or offering them to have a shower chair at home. This is a really good modification, but there are some low level or low cost modifications that we can provide them. And the last group are the people suffering from traumatic conditions. So these are the segment of the market who have experienced an abrupt or traumatic change that necessitates accommodation to allow them to age in place. So, I mean, nobody wants to have an accident, but if it happens and you end up being wheelchair bound because of spinal cord injury, some people are still able to live independently. Let's say working in the kitchen, if we can lower the kitchen height to their level, as you can see here, they'll be able to reach and still function even though they are using wheelchair to do their stuff or to do their kitchen work. So those are the three market segments based on needs when we talk about aging in place. So, where do you think you are right now? You don't have to answer me, just think about it. You can write it down if you want. Then we'll talk more about that as we move along with our like what Ed said earlier, he had experience of taking care of his mom who had some dementia, physical as well as short-term memory loss. And I don't know, Mom Esther and Mom Chris, if you feel like sometimes an issue with balance, you're slowing down, difficult to move at night. So maybe you have that experience too. Or maybe you've taken care of your parents as well at some point, or your significant others. So in a study by Lean and others in 2015, they reported that older adults are actually resilient when they're faced with losses in functional and environmental support. So older adults automatically alter or modify their home environment to manage age-related decline and to be able to maintain person-environment fit. So what this means is that older adults remain able to live in their homes and community through utilization of the necessary assistance or environmental support to optimize their independence. So it's possible. It's just a matter of understanding, like I said earlier, your needs, your limitations, and knowing the resources. So your participation here tonight is actually a step towards that goal of learning more about aging in place. So the question is, where to start? So now we're talking about the solution and design for aging in place. So I guess from my perspective as occupational therapist, to do this is to do a home safety assessment tool. So in your handout, the picture that I showed you, okay, this is another activity that I would like you to do, is to identify what's wrong with this picture. Obviously, they are all numbered. There are actually 8 problems there that need to be identified. So,
Number 4, the lighting.
Lighting, yes.
Because it happened to me already.
All right, to help you out, you can match all those numbers. After they're already labeled. Okay, so those are the answers to the. The steps,
There should be 2.
Oh, yes.
unsafe steps,
Threshold.
crack or too steep.
Lack of railings, yep.
Yep. there's a marked or raised threshold.
No ramp for
It
wheelchair.
should be low.
Lack of lighting, as what Ed mentioned earlier. Uneven pavement, cracked.
No run for wheelchair.
Yeah. If somebody wants to get, well, sometimes you have a friend who is in a wheelchair who can't visit you because you don't have access. You don't have ramp access. So sometimes that's difficult too. All right. So going back to our slides, another way to get going with this is to obviously go all over the house and actually complete a home checklist or like a home audit. So this is an example of a safe at home checklist. So we already talked about the exterior entrance and exit, and then we talk about interior, bathroom, lighting, grab bars, the kitchen, how the counter height and things like that. The next slide I'm gonna show you is actually an ideal solution and design for senior needing aging in place program. So I'm gonna let you watch this video.
Video.
In this segment, we're focusing on the increasingly popular and profitable niche of aging in place. Older adults, with the help of certified remodelers, remodeling so they can remain in their homes longer. In the process, they're also creating more comfortable and convenient living spaces for everyone. Remodelers trained in the art of aging in place are called Certified Aging in Place Specialists, or CAPS. Developed in partnership with the AARP, it's become by far the most popular professional designation offered by NAHP Remodelers, formerly the Remodelers Council, with more than 1,400 graduates since 2002. There are some very real demographic and social reasons driving the popularity of aging in place, which is occurring nationwide and in every market. The 2000 census, for instance, found that nearly 4 million households have 3 or more generations living together. By now, that number has certainly increased and will continue to do so. A more recent study, conducted in 2004 by the AARP and the National Alliance for Caregivers, found that 34 million people are looking after someone 50 years old or older, and more than 9 million of them live with that person. And then, of course, there are the baby boomers. More than 80 million of them, the largest generation in our nation's history. Some are resisting the notion of traditional retirement. Others won't admit they're getting older. And still others are simply living longer, healthier lives. Whatever the reason, the fact is they are starting to recognize some limitations in their existing homes and are looking to make some changes so they can stay there as long as possible. In fact, more than 90% of people over age 60, the threshold that thousands of boomers are crossing and will cross for the next 20 years, prefer to remain in the home they live in now. Finally, because universal design principles apply to everyone in the house, no matter their ages or abilities, making these adjustments boosts the property value. So now that the stage is set, what are remodeling contractors doing about it? Dan Bowden of Legal Eagle Contractors in Houston is the founder of NAHB's CAPS program. Like most remodelers in the CAPS program, Dan gains most of his work from baby boomers. Some are looking to alter their own family home to make it accessible to a parent moving in. Others contact him to initiate an aging-in-place solution for their parent's home. In the case of the former, a common project is to create a bedroom suite for a grandparent. Located on the main level to avoid steps and provide access to the majority of the public living spaces, these suites are being expanded beyond a simple bedroom and bath to include sitting or living areas, private decks or balconies, and expanded closets. The point is to make the transition easier, allowing ample private living space, but accessibility to the house and the rest of the family. The bathroom specifically is a critical area to make accessible. One common solution is a walk-in shower that eliminates a raised threshold. Bowden says the sleek lines of the design are also becoming popular with the able-bodied set, who see it as a luxury upgrade. How's that for mainstream? Other bath features include higher toilets, better lighting, and contrasting colors. It's also smart, and relatively inexpensive, to reinforce the bathroom walls with extra blocking or grab bars later on, as needed. Adding a master suite to the main level of an existing home is certainly a popular option, but is not for everyone. There may not be enough room on the lot for the addition, or the new space would take away from other critical areas of the house. It may also be that the owners simply wish to keep their master suite upstairs, enjoying their privacy and perhaps an elevated view as they grow older. The solution to that is a residential elevator. Requiring a framed shaft and, I'll admit, a fair chunk of change, these residential scaled lifts allow the home's footprint to remain intact while providing access to every level. To be sure, an elevator is not for everyone, but it is becoming a popular and profitable upgrade, even for folks not remodeling specifically for aging in place. There are almost endless solutions to achieving universal design and recreating a home that allows aging in place, especially in critical areas like kitchens and baths. And remodelers who are certified by the CAPS program are best equipped to apply those solutions to a growing demand among aging homeowners. For more information about CAPS and to find a course schedule for classes near you, go online or call their toll-free number. Thanks for watching, and keep visiting Build TV, ideas to help your business. For Build TV, I'm Jeff Lankish.
So those are the ideal designs of for aging in place. And some areas that some people just want to do the kitchen, some do the bathroom. So earlier we talked about barriers to independent living, physical, cognitive impairment. So with most senior population, it's mostly about memory loss, cognitive wandering, and medication assistance. So the current literature in senior care, once we set up the environment, how do we sustain? Because we can't just put things there and leave them alone, because they still need some help at some point. So how do we sustain their presence at home or their wish to age independently at home? So we need to look for what senior care are available out there, and it has to be supported with evidence as something that works. Okay. So Dixon and Toto describe a care coordination in 2018. It's between a social worker, working with nursing, and working with your physician. And also in 2013, Sheffield, Smith, and Becker also evaluated about an agency-based in-home services where not just talking about self-assessment, but also performance-based assessment to really see if this person is capable of doing aging in place. Because sometimes you spend this much, but there's this breakdown in functioning that they can't sustain living independently. So we need to be prudent about that also. We talked about capable earlier, remember Mrs. B? So capable is actually, it's an acronym for Community Aging in Place, Advancing Better Living for Elders program that was based in Baltimore, Maryland. This program is really good because it's funded by the federal government and also other funding sources from Johns Hopkins. So they were able to gather a lot of individuals, low income elderlies in the community that they supported to do aging in place. And lastly, Truckmeyer and Pickens in 2016 talk about really doing this in a client-centered way and training the caregiver, because it's a partnership between the person and the caregiver. It's different when you're 70s. It's also different when you go to 80s and 90s. Even if you are cognitively intact, sometimes it's your physical capacity that fails, that you really need more help from caregiver support.
From 60s.
60s is still okay, up and running.
Up and running.
So I'm just helping you navigate some of the things where you can go. You can always go to AARP Home Fit Guide and their website. There's a lot of things about Home Fit Guide, and this is similar to the home evaluation or home audit. It helps you go through each of the steps of the areas of the house where you need to assess. And now the thing is, a lot of people want to do a lot of smart technology. Okay, cloud-based program helps you turn on your TV, Alexa, turn on the fan, things like that. They're actually fitted with that. Somebody can just turn off your lights or turn on your lights automatically as you walk around the hallway. So those are some things that are up and coming. And of course, you need to know which home care agency you need to trust. There's a lot of them. Sometimes it's difficult to navigate, so it's important to find out which one fits your need. So where to start? Talk to your doctor, and then complete the home assessment, work with an occupational therapist or an aging specialist. So you can have that conversation and have you start with your assessment. Now, those are all the information, and I hope it helps you be inspired to look into what you want to do for yourself. And, you can be a planner or you can be a procrastinator, but if you have the information, you know that you need to do it at some point. You need to, what we call it, come to yourself in a moment where you need to decide, do I want to stay here or do I want to move in a different house that fit my needs? So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attendance and participation, and I hope that I help you at least have this information to guide you with your aging in place needs. Do you have any questions or clarifications?
No, it's great. I can relate to this because, like I said, when I moved my mom in, everything changed. We had to rethink everything about the house, and we vowed to keep her out of a nursing home, and it was hard. But my house wasn't set up like it was, and it needed to be. So there was all kinds of problem areas in the house that for me and you or wouldn't be a problem, but
For her.
everything was a danger spot.
Right.
And it's just all the little things, just getting up, moving around, the constant threat of falling because the house was not set up properly. So no, this is great.